Hi, my name is Laura Zork. I'm the president of Best in Ed, and I'm also the chairman of the National School Boards Coalition. Today, we're going to discuss school board leadership the right way. We always like to start off with a fun fact of did you know? Did you know there are approximately 14,000 school districts across the United States, with over 95,000 school board members responsible for governance of over $600 billion each year. This funding supports the education of over 53 million K through 12 public education students. So never doubt the role that you have as a school board member is so important to every community in this country. School board leadership the right way is a comprehensive professional development for school board members by school board members. And we are going to be going chapter by chapter through this comprehensive resource. This resource is approximately 316 pages. It goes from onboarding all the way to those more advanced issues of finance budgets and just security and everything that you'll encounter as a school board member during your term. And we encourage you because we will be going chapter by chapter, and there's 43 chapters, but we will not be able to cover all the information that's in this book. And that's why we hope that you will grab yourself a copy by scanning this QR code right here. So, about the authors, the book is written by myself and my colleague, Dr. Karen Hiltz. Dr. Hiltz is a former school board member in Virginia. She retired from government procurement, so she brings a lot of value when it comes to our contracts, and she's done a lot of research on policies and a wealth of knowledge we've taken from Dr. Karen Hiltz and added it into this book. And then myself, I am the national director for Best in Ed, and I have a lot of experience because I did serve on the school board for 4 years. My last 2 years, I served as the chairman, so I have both sides of being a board member and then actually being the chairman. And I served on several different committees while I was serving as school board member, from legislative liaison, and participated in many committees. And that's one thing I just want to stress, that in all our trainings, in all our curriculum that we have written for you, it is actually written by school board members. It's not written by consultants. It's not written by administrators. It is from the perspective of school board members. So in section 1 of this book and of our professional development, we start off with onboarding, because as a candidate elect, and as a new sitting school board member, there's a lot of things that you are trying to take in, and so you're trying to prioritize what you need to learn. And so we really break it out into different steps of how you can dice that up so it's not so overwhelming. We will go through clarifying your roles and responsibilities, how to facilitate a smooth transition onto the board, how to build a knowledge of a strong foundation with a historical context that comes later on in chapter 2, and with my colleague Dr. Karen Hiltz, and enhance your organization with your time management. And we encourage you to really reflect on what was the purpose and what was that platform that you ran on. So, in this chapter 1, we really want to dive into effective time management and the importance of ongoing professional development and your mentorship that you need to have along the way within your 4 years of your term. Now, let's jump into it. You are elected, now what? As an organization that has trained many school board members or many candidates across the nation who has been elected to the seat, we're often asked by the over the 500 candidates that we have helped train, okay, I'm elected, what do I do now? So thus we have this section, you're elected, now what? Because we know that when you're campaigning and you're running on these platform issues, and then when you are starting your term into your role, there's a lot coming to you. And so it's time for you to get organized. And what we like to say in step 1 is treat it, yes, we know it's supposed to be a part-time role, but it really is a part-time role with a full-time commitment. And as long as you go into this with that perspective of being flexible, you are going to be way ahead of other members across the country that thinks it's only those 2 to 3 meetings a month and that's it. So you have to come on board knowing that you have to have that full-time commitment. And what do we mean by that? And let's just talk about this. So we know in your first year, we know because we've been there and we've experienced this. So in the first year when you come on the board, you're going to have to invest more time than you will probably in the second, third, and fourth. Because why it's so important in your as if you're elected in November and you're getting sworn in between November and January, that is your period to really get to know your school district, because in coming up in January, in that season, January to May, you're starting to already have to attend these budget workshops. You're going to have contracts coming to you. There's a lot of things that are very important that's going to start happening in the spring, and you have to almost get in there and do a crash course to learn the dynamics within that school district so that you can approve a smart budget. You don't want to have to wait your second year to really have strong input into the budget and just rubber stamp it the first year and not have a say in it. You want to be prepared. So, what we suggest in your first, as you're in that period between being elected and the budget season, is you need to start meeting with those key uh, personnel within your school district, like the director of your transportation, the director of your food service. Meet with your principals, get a walkthrough of the campuses within your school district so that you really understand what the dynamics of the district is and the needs of those districts. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I come on board, and because with my background in operations management, how am I going to make smart decisions on a budget if I really didn't know the dynamics of how things were operating? So I did ask to meet with our chief financial officer and the directors of our facilities and our principals. And not all school board members, they said I was the first school board member that ever asked to do that. But we have to remember that we can't just not do something because other board members haven't done it in the past. In order for you to be a very well informed school board member, you need to take the time to do your research and don't allow them to push you into the trap that it's not your job to get into the day-to-day weeds. Whenever you take an oath, and a part of your oath is approving and adopting a budget, but yet you've not done the research to really understand the financial needs of your school district, then how are you actually upholding the oath that you took? So don't fall into that trap. Really take the time to invest and get out to your school district and meet your principals and administrators to learn the needs of the district. Talk to your teachers. I know you did that whenever you were campaigning, but it's different now because you have the inside view, whereas before you were an outsider trying to look in. Now you're actually within it and you have more access to speak to these individuals. And secondly, in your as you're coming on board, you're going to have to really understand that it's there are going to be meetings that are going to have to be called that are called special meetings and things that you hadn't planned on. If your school district, if your school board meets twice a month and you have 2 workshops a month, that's 4 meetings a month. But then you have those other meetings like your special meetings. You might have bargaining negotiations that are happening with the union contracts that you have to have those special meetings for, and then you might have weather related special meetings. For example, we see in the Midwest we have tornadoes. We've seen floods happening even up north. We have the fires out west, and where I live in Florida, we have the hurricanes. So it's important that you understand that you have to be flexible so that you can get the business done of the board. And then lastly, whenever you're looking at your first year as a school board member, you want to really save the springtime. um, do not schedule any family vacations. Try to clear your calendar, because in the springtime, when we have the graduations happening throughout our school districts, it's important for you as a school board member to partake in these festive activities. Because as we talk about this job, yes, it's you committed to it, but you are going to be you're going to have good days on a as a board member, and you're going to have those days that aren't so rewarding. And you're going to, if you're, and don't think it's unusual, you're going to be like everyone else. You're going to think, now, why am I doing this? Because you're going to have pressure from media. You're going to have pressure from, every stakeholder on the decisions you're making, but those decisions are the right decisions. So you're going to have pressure on you. And what's going to help you get through this pressure is making sure that you get out to these schools, especially during the graduation season, because there's nothing like it. I'm going to tell you right now, when it comes to graduation and you have the principal and you have the superintendent and your fellow board members, and they're calling those seniors one by one to come up to that stage, and they come over that stage and you shake their hand, and it's like you fill your cup up. Everything that you doubted of why you're there, you're going to be so energized and realize that the time that you're investing and the so valuable and important role that you're doing as a school board member, that is the moment that you're going to realize this is what it's all about. And don't just limit yourself to going out to the senior graduations. You're going to have kindergarten graduations, you're going to have fifth grade graduations, and you're going to have eighth grade graduations. You don't have to go to all of them, but I tell you that, the kindergartners are just so cute. And then you have the fifth graders, and then you have the all knowing eighth graders that are a little cocky, and, they're in that period. But get out to these graduations, save your spring, and be prepared for that. And in chapter 4, we're going to talk about the school board members master calendar. And this is a time and an area where we're going to really dive into who's responsible for making sure that you're aware of these various activities happening within the school district. So step number 2, as a school board member, we want to make sure that you build your knowledge foundation based on your state laws, your state statutes, your state articles. Every state's different of what you call it. And in the back of this book, because we can't actually put it on the screen, we actually have the QR codes that link you directly to each state, so that just briefly show this, kind of an example like we have there on the screen. Through the QR codes, we are going to directly link you to what your rules is according to your state. And you need to make sure you need to print it out. You need to have it with you. So when you're ever in doubt, and I, as a school board member, I printed mine out. I actually have it. I had it laminated. I believe it was 2 pages, and I had it at the dais with me. And before I met with my superintendent, and I knew it was going to be a push-pull, I would review it to give me the confidence that I needed to remind me of what my job and duty was to set policy, to approve the budget, and hold our superintendent accountable. And so if you don't know what your duties and your powers are, you're going to be ran over by your superintendent, by your fellows, by the bureaucrats within the system, because they're used to board members not being so engaged and being knowledgeable of what their authorities are. And they're just going to expect you to go along, to get along, just like everyone has in the past, and not challenge the status quo. But when you know your state, what your state law says, you're going to have so much confidence, and you're going to be able to do your job better and more effective. So, building on this, we strongly encourage you to continue. Some states require professional development hours, like I believe in the state of Oklahoma, it's 14 hours. Texas, I think you have 9 hours. Florida has 3 hours. Some states don't have any hours that require professional development. But that doesn't mean that you don't take the time to invest in yourself, because this is a professional role that you've taken on, and it's up to you to continue to improve your job. And the way you do that is that you continue to watch and attend professional developments, and you reach out to a mentor to help you. What we like to say is maintain a balanced perspective, because we know historically over the last 40 years, there's been a monopoly on the school board development um, trainings and the mentorship. It's come from one national organization, and over time, this very well intended national organization has become very politicized, very tied to the Democrat Party. Uh, and aligned to a lot of values and beliefs that many of us don't have, which is against educational choice and things like that. So we just encourage you, when you do go into your state association trainings, have that in mind of where their perspective is coming from, because with their perspective comes from individuals that actually have that same mindset that's going to be giving the trainings. And not only that, what we have found within, because I have attended my state training when I was on the school board, and they're very aligned with these special interest groups, like our teachers associations, our superintendents associations. For example, our state trainings were always held in the same building, at the same hotel, at the same time as our superintendents association meetings. So you had the school board trainings and you had the superintendent trainings, and the superintendents would come over to train school board members. Well, what perspective do you think you're going to have when you have superintendents and administrators training school board members? You're going to have the mindset that we're the experts. Let us do our job. Don't question us and trust us. Yes, we want to trust, but we're going to verify, and we're going to know those questions to ask. I whenever I was on the school board, some of the most valuable trainings that I went to actually was like the finance trainings and some of the state law trainings. So we're not saying don't attend these trainings, but just understand where the perspective of the trainers in this association is coming from. So we know that back in 2021, the National School Boards Association, because whenever I tell you it's a bias leaning organization, I'm not just saying that because I'm pulling it out of the air. We know back in 2021, the straw that broke the camel's back was whenever the National School Board Association came out against the parents. They had met with the Biden administration, and they had asked the Biden administration through this letter right here. The National School Board Association sent this letter to President Biden on September 29th, 2021, asking the administration, if you remember during this time, parents were showing up to these school board meetings. It was a wave, it was a movement of parents getting involved, speaking out, saying enough's enough, remove the mask, my child's not going to be vaccinated. You're not going to teach critical race theory to my children. You're not going to divide our community. And so parents started showing up to these meetings, and they started telling our school board members through their 3-minute speeches that if you don't do your job and if you do not listen to us, we are going to have you removed from office. And so we had a lot of parents, because we were initially part of that movement where we were training parents to get out and speak at these school board meetings. But what had happened, instead of the school boards association supporting school board members so that they could really address the concerns of our parents, we had the National School Board Association, who had, right here on page 2, and I'm going to read it to you. This is where it really become problematic with this association. As these acts of malice, violence, and threats against our public school officials have increased, the classification of these heinous actions could be the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. As such, the NSBA requests a joint expedited review by the U.S. Department of Justice education, and homeland security, along with appropriate training, coordination, investigations, and enforcement mechanisms from the FBI, including any technical assistance necessary from the state and local coordination with its national security branch, counterterrorism division, as well as other federal agencies with federal jurisdiction, authority, and oversight. Additionally, NSBA requests that such review examine appropriate enforcement actions against these crimes and acts of violence under the Gun Free School Act, the Patriot Act, in regards to domestic terrorism. And it goes on there on the end. But that is whenever we had an outpouring of parents who had decided to run for school board, and it has sparked the awareness that it's time for an alternative to this association. With a caveat to this letter that was sent, there was an investigation, and since then, I believe it was last year, leadership come back from the SBA and apologized for this letter. But once you squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't get it back in there. And what has been done has been done. So therefore, we want you to maintain a balanced perspective and understand there are alternatives to the School Board Association. There's state groups that have formed into their own coalition, but through the National School Boards Coalition, we now have state chapters that you can get your training and your mentorship through us. For many of the states, some of the states might require your hours still to come from the state association, but if you are in a state that has that monopoly, if the association has that monopoly, I want to give you hope, because several years ago, in 2021, Florida statute, there were some laws that passed, and what this law said was it gave the authority and the power to each individual school board member to decide where they get their professional development. What does that mean? The law was passed so that even though a majority, it could be, let's say you have 5 board members and 3 board members vote, yes, we are going to join our state association, but the other 2 board members say, I don't want to join the state association. The way that typically is in every other state in the country, except for Florida, is that the majority rules, right? So let's say in Florida it's $3,200 per school board member that gets sent to the Florida School Board Association, times 5, 3,200 times 5, and that's what the Florida School Board Association would get for a membership. Well, what we say here in Florida is that every school board member has the right to direct where they become a member, and where the tax funding is not going to go towards something that they don't believe in. So that gives these board members that disagree with the association the right to take those funds and get their professional development from other places. And if you are interested in spearheading some legislation like this in your state, please contact me. We are in the midst of working on our legislative platform. We'd love to work with you on spearheading this in your state. You can email me at president@bestined.org and let me know if you would like to know more information about this piece of legislation and like to work with us to get this going in your state. So lastly, we're going to end this with reminding you to remember your whys. And step 4, this is so important, because as an elected official, you need to expect to encounter scrutiny, criticism. You're going to have that push and pull, and there's going to be those days that you might feel like giving up. And if you write down your whys of why am I here? What was my purpose of being elected? Why did I want to, what were those goals and accomplishments I wanted to work on during my time? You have to write those down, because 4 years is a long period, and you might encounter, it might be monthly, it might be every meeting, it might be every once in a while you'll have that push. And And it, depending on where you are in your life, if you're having issues at work, or if you're having issues within your marriage, or some of your kids, or you have some struggles going on there, the stress of life is going to happen as an elected official. You're going to have the media come against you, and we're here to support you. We know that these attacks will come, but just remember why you're here. And that's why we say you have to get out to these schools. You have to get around these kids, because once you get around these students, it fills your cup back up. Whenever you feel like you're running on fumes, get out to these schools, write down your whys, and look at these whenever you're feeling down and you're feeling frustrated. You're going to have this posted right next to your desk to remind yourself of what your purpose is. So we're going to end this chapter 1 with homework and research. And so what we would love you to do is examine your state statutes and analyze your Constitution. You need to take a look at your district policies. You're not going to read the entire 3,000 page manuals of your school board policies, but you need to know the categories, and you need to familiarize with how you house this information. Some school districts are still doing it through the old binder method, but a lot of school districts have invested into which is called board docs, and it has it very well categorized and laid out, and you can do searches, keyword searches within the board docs. So as a school board member, get into your board docs. Even as a candidate, if you're watching this, you need to get into the school board docs, because you have access to that too, to really familiarize yourself with the categories of board doc, so that whenever it comes time to start doing discussions, or you have parents come to you, you know exactly where to go. You don't have to have all that information in your head, but you need to know where to go, and invest the time. And invest the time. Tell your superintendent that you would like to meet with these individuals throughout the school district, and you could work with his office to set that up, or you could work with your executive assistant to set those up. But just let them know, your superintendent know, that this is something that you're going to do, and this should be a part of your initial conversation with your superintendent, that what your plan of action is over the next few months is to get out and meet with all these individuals, so that you're prepared for the time when the budget comes around. And lastly, note down your whys and store them in a place so that you can regularly review those. That is your homework for chapter 1. And again, everything that we're discussing today is covered in the School Board Leadership the Right Way. You can scan the QR code here, and we can mail you a copy, or you can go onto Amazon and you can put in School Board Leadership the Right Way by myself, Laura Zork, and Dr. Karen Hiltz, and you can order it that way. So what's up next? Chapter 2, a brief history of K through 12 education. We're going to give you just a highlight of the federal fundings, the changes that are currently happening within the current administration. We want to help you understand the titles, the history of the titles, the future of education, which we know is going to be in your hands with all these changes that are happening through the Department of Education. We want to encourage you to be excited about the changes and not to fear. And so we're going to cover that section. But in order to get the updates of the new videos that we will constantly be posting over the next year, that will go simultaneously with the book of 43 chapters, like and subscribe us on YouTube. Share it with your colleagues on the school board. And if you have candidates that you think are worthy to sit with you on the dais, make sure that you share this with them.